best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
In January 1961, Kennedy could appear noble as he told us,
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
in 5 years, the same white intellectual youth who had volunteered for the Peace Corps under JFK were burning their draft cards and refusing to do anything for their country except destroy it. The quote, free world democracy which millions accepted as the US's world role in 1960 could, 8 years later, only come across seriously on the pages of the New York Times or Wall Street Journal. Instead, the movement spoke of imperialism, which up until then was the exclusive concept of the hackneyed old left. The civil rights integration struggle became the Black Power movement. The teach-ins started out debating whether the US was using the most effective means to, quote, bring democracy to Vietnam, and concluded that the US was the most undemocratic and reactionary power of all.
We have the collection of someone named Ted Allen, who's a sort of amateur scholar, Marxist scholar. His collection came to us through someone named Jeff Perry, and Jeff Perry was friends with someone who was affiliated with the Weather Underground and had this collection.
I feel a little bit like I'm the weatherman whisperer, like a member of this sort of middle generation. One thing was this sense that we are going through apocalyptic times, where social order is breaking down or will completely break down. And then in 68, 69, 70, there was an unbelievable proliferation of, violent imagery. And then people at some level are girding themselves for civil war. At a deeper level, this sense of, oh my God, like we have defied the societal fathers. And then they are gonna smack us, and they're gonna smack us hard. And then this is all at some level suicidal.
The SDS ended its 7th annual convention yesterday in Chicago and accomplished little beyond a deep and bitter split between two factions, the so-called regulars and the progressive labor group, which follows the teachings of Chairman Mao.
SDS was, the largest young people's radical organization in, the history of America. At its peak may have had 125,000 members. Then it attached itself to civil rights struggle. It attached itself to anti-war protests. And then everything in the 60s moved, incredibly quickly.
They were trying to stop the war, and it wasn't happening. They were trying to end racism. That wasn't happening.
The organization had become deeply ideological, with various versions of Marxism competing.
People like Bernardine Dorn, a lot of the people who end up being in the leadership of Weather, they were looking to the Black Panthers for inspiration. They felt they needed to provoke a situation because the war was just getting bigger and more people were dying.
SDS formally splits in the summer of 1969. And it was just this, maelstrom of young people trying to remake themselves as revolutionaries.
We will build a revolutionary youth movement capable of actively engaging in the war against the imperialists. We will escalate our attacks until imperialism is defeated in Vietnam.
And then the convention sort of fractures for a while. Two different formations claim to be the real SDS. And then the Weathermen stop investing in it as a national organization. And then they basically throw it over the cliff as a kind of pre-revolutionary petty bourgeois, formation. The Days of Rage demonstrated how isolated they were while also contributing to their sense of being the only righteous white people who understand the moral necessity to wage armed struggle with this level of risk. These semi-independent cells sort of competing with each other to see who could be sort of the most militant and come up with the most militant tactics.
There would be ideas coming up within many of the cadre that were considering different kinds of armed actions. And there is an ongoing debate about whether or not they should target humans.
Terry had been a poet and an English major during his brief stint in college. Science was a foreign language, and he hated it for being indecipherable. But his fear, his courage, and his rage against injustice were feeding each other into a white heat. His fear could be overcome, he believed, by will. Most people, even those in the movement, seemed to be willing to stand by while the United States rode roughshod over its victims. We owed it to the Vietnamese to take some of the heat away from them. We owed it to the Black movement to do the same.
I am addressing this self-criticism to past, present, and future comrades. Although I am still engaged in examining the depths of my past errors, I get concerned about moving too fast.
Supremacist attitudes, nor white supremacists, nor many other bourgeois ideologies.
Became something I fought for.
That shows you the hazard when you give yourself over to something that you can't sort of fully control, that may or may not accord with your own values. And you're on the run, and you don't have a lot of money, and you haven't had a real relationship with your parents in years, and it makes people, a little crazy. And then there's a fine line between, a subculture and a cult. Mark Rudd feels completely comfortable saying that at its worst, it has elements of a cult. And he said the only difference is that in a cult, typically some charismatic leader imposes all this weird stuff on you. And he's like, in this case, we did it to ourselves.
Beginning to feel it would be better alone, without the constant competitiveness, the constant maneuvering. I'd like to try it. It hasn't been good this way. They told me it would be like this. Alone and childless, I'd feel it was all a waste. The body weaker, the spirit diminished, and vulnerable to the state. But the people riding on the subways, the women with their sun-glowed and golden faces, beautiful even in polluted, filthy New York, which assaults them minute by minute, gives me hope and courage. My sister, on the brink of leaving her husband, with 3 children to care for, frightened but mustering her courage, says, I won't be the first or the last, gives me courage and hope. It's not like they said it would be. Nothing could move me from caring and trying again, even after a dismal failure.
They are an example of people who were willing to give up everything. You've got to be in it for the long haul. The long haul sometimes is going to be more than your life. You look at places where there have been revolutions, people have been organizing those things for generations. I mean, you look at Vietnam, look at what's going on in Palestine. They've been fighting for like 50, 60, 70 years. And the idea, like in the United States, was like, we'll get it done before our kids are grown.
They took a global revolutionary fervor and then projected it onto a country whose consciousness was in a different place, and then convinced themselves that something that was, properly speaking, impossible was actually possible. And then they paid the price of their error.
What I don't understand is how the Weather Underground could have been so right about what was wrong with the United States and so wrong about how to fix it.